Well, hello! Welcome back to my channel. Joshana here to talk about some friggin' reading. So, I haven't ever gotten this comment necessarily on my videos of how do you read so much? But it's just something that I see frequently in the community, in the bookish community, in the booktube community, particularly people who don't have booktube channels, but even sometimes people who have booktube channels. When people are like, God, how do some of these booktubers read so fucking much, right? And I think that it all depends on the person, obviously. And I think especially if you listen to audiobooks a fair amount, I mean, you can knock some shit out, especially if you are listening to it at a higher speed, which I always do. If I'm listening to an audiobook, it's at least at 1.5.
What the fuck was that?
It's at least at 1.75 times speed, if not 2 times the speed. It depends on the book, because sometimes it's like, that's too much. But like I'm rereading the Parasol Protectorate series right now, and I'm listening to it on audio, and I have it at 2 times, and it's totally fine. So yeah, it depends. But if someone says that they listen to audiobooks a fair amount, they're probably reading at a little bit, higher speed. But even if they're not, like that is just going to open up so much more time for taking in these stories. You know what I mean? You can do that while you're taking care of your kids. You can do that while you're commuting to work, while you're driving your kids around, whatever, commuting wherever you're fucking commuting, while you're doing chores around the house, while you're doing some artwork. Like, and it depends on the person too, because for me personally, I really can't listen to an audiobook if I'm doing anything other than dishes, sweeping the floor, or in my car. And like, that's about it. I've tried listening to audiobooks while like building a house in The Sims, and I just get so distracted. I'll be like, oh shit, I haven't been listening for like 5 minutes. I don't know what the fuck happened, and I'll have to go back. So it depends on the person. Another thing I know for a fact that people skim sometimes, you know what I mean? And sometimes people skim pretty heavily. And I always try to be really transparent about that, because I do that sometimes, where there's a book that I'm like, I kind of want to DNF this, but like I'm kind of close to the end, and I want to know what happens, and I want to read it. I will heavily skim that bitch. But I always tell you guys, and I know for a fact that there are booktubers who do that and don't disclose it necessarily. But then they don't say that in their video. And I mean, to each their own. I guess you don't have to say that. But I do think that it gives other people an impression of like, you're reading all these books like super thoroughly, you know what I mean? When that might not be the case. Most of us, I think, skim on some level when you're not super into a book. Obviously, if you're really into it and you're just like fucking loving this story, you're probably reading like every single fucking word carefully. But if you're kind of like, it's fine, I guess, 9 times out of 10, you're skimming a bit at least, which is fine. I do it too, like I said. And I don't talk about it every single time I fucking skim on any level, but it's when I like heavily skim. Like, so there are times where I'm reading a book where I'm like, all right, at the beginning of the chapter, nothing happened, they're just talking. Okay, nothing, they're just talking again. Okay, he said something. Okay, where's the end of the chapter? Because that'll tell me what, okay, so that was the point of that chapter. Okay, like that's, when I say I'm heavily skimming, that's what I'm doing. I'm barely fucking reading it. I'm just looking at the pages to see if anything like sticks out at me, and then I'll usually go read like a synopsis online. But again, I just think it's not fair to not disclose that. Another thing is lifestyle can play a huge part, especially at my age. Most people my age are married or have kids, whereas I'm over here like, just living my best life. There's no kids running around. I have really no responsibilities aside from my Monday through Friday 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. job, working from home now. But even when I wasn't working from home, like my job ends at 4 and it ends at 4. I don't have like other stuff to take home. I'm not in school. I don't have homework to do. I don't have papers to write. I have a pretty empty social calendar at any given time. Obviously right now it's very empty because like I can't go do stuff. I mean, now you can, but like I'm not. I see people on my Instagram stories like out at the club this weekend, and I'm like, no, you guys do that. I'm gonna stay home. But even without the whole COVID thing, I'll hang out with my friends like maybe twice a month. I'll have like a social thing I'm doing. And then like with my boyfriend, we'll go get dinner or something, but I'm not doing a bunch of shit all the time. I'm not like out and about and going here and there and like a social butterfly. I'm just not. I'm at home a lot, so I get to read a lot. And I think people underestimate that. If you're in school, like, and you have a booktube channel, I'm so fucking impressed, honestly. Like, especially if you're like consistent with that shit at all. And if you're, married and you have kids, holy hell, I don't know how you do it. And I think like when people have kids and like the kids will be in the background and stuff and they'll be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Don't apologize for that. Like, you're doing something you enjoy and working it around your life, And I think anybody who's a reasonable human being will see that and appreciate that and like admire you for that. People like it, like you're seeing your real life, you know what I mean? Basically, the moral of this whole story, of this whole video is don't beat yourself up if certain people seem to just read so much. Sometimes people just process information faster. And a lot of times, like I said, they're listening to a lot of audiobooks or they're skimming a bit and they're maybe not disclosing it. Maybe they are. At any rate, they're skimming a little bit. Or they just have less obligations than you do, probably, Another thing that's a huge thing, I think, is mental health. I don't have any mental health struggles, issues, difficulties, whatever you want to call them, experiences. So I see people talk about that a lot, though. Like, if you're in a funk, in a depression funk or whatever, that it's hard for a lot of people. Some people, that's when they do want to read more. But for some people, when they're like that and when they're in the midst of that, they just don't want to pick up books. They don't want to read. They want to distract themselves with something simpler, you know what I mean? And so that's another thing that comes into play. If you don't have mental health struggles, it's all just about like your mood. If you're in the mood to read, you have the time to read, you can just sit there and fucking read all day if you want to. And I don't even think I read that much necessarily, to me anyway. But that's probably because I'm comparing myself to people who read like 20 books in a month. I typically read, I would say on average, maybe like 7 books a month, sometimes more, sometimes less. But yeah, it's all just on an individual basis. And you never know. Some people don't want to talk about their personal life all that much, which is totally fine. So you don't know. They might have just all this fucking free time. And that's a thing. And you're over here with like a busy social calendar. Maybe you're in school, maybe you have a kid, maybe you don't have a kid, but like you just have a lot going on in your life, or your work is like really demanding and stressful and shit. Or you have weird hours for your work. Like if you work in retail or some shit, or you have different shifts every week, it can be really hard to like have a schedule. So take those things into consideration and don't beat yourselves up. That's all. I just felt like chatting about that, I guess, for some reason. As always, thank you so much for your time. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.